Money Talk with Melanie features lively discussions of a wide range of global, domestic, and kitchen table financial topics. Guest interviews include entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Be sure to listen up. This is important because it's your money. Your money. Be sure to listen to Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
And welcome to Money Talk with Melanie. This is your host, Melanie Collette. I hope everyone is having a wonderful week. Welcome back to another episode of Money Talk with Melanie. Today is February 3rd, and we are broadcasting live from the beautiful, still snow-covered Wildwood, New Jersey. We do not get a lot of snow here on the very east coast, on the peninsula of New Jersey. Whenever someone asks me where I'm from, I usually say Cape May because that's kind of like the most relatable place that people have heard of. If you say South Jersey, people say Trenton, and I'm like, no, Trenton is like 3 hours north of me. It's the peninsula of New Jersey. It's Cape May. It's like as far south as you could possibly go. Like the next step is the Atlantic. But when we do get snow, we usually like really get snow because we're next to the ocean. And so when you get next to that water and we get snow, so we like really got pounded last weekend. And so the snow is still there, but it does look rather beautiful. So I'm broadcasting live here on 98.7 The Coast. Money Talk with Melanie. My guests that I am going to have this evening in the first hour, we are going to have business growth evangelists. I love people use a lot of things to brand themselves. And I love when people have interesting branding titles. So Natasha Miller calls herself a business growth evangelist, and she's going to talk to us about how to develop your highest potential and to succeed despite your circumstances. I like that very much. So that's our 7th hour guest, and our 8th hour guest is the founder of Classic Value Investors. His name is Mariusz Skonieczny. I've been practicing that name all day, and I still think I messed it up. I'll practice again during the break. He's going to talk to us about whether or not the Fed can fight inflation. And I think I ran across this video, so I invited him on the show because we talk a lot about inflation, and we speak usually, and I think the media talks a lot about inflation just in one way. We talk about it in terms of just things costing more. And that's the only way we talk about inflation. And as an economics teacher, I think it's just highly irresponsible of me to allow my audience to simply think of inflation in just that way. And of course, the media and politicians would have us think that the politicians are solely in control of how inflation works. And so I thought that Mariusz has some pretty interesting insights on exactly how inflation works and exactly really how much control politicians have over inflation, have or don't have, I should say, over inflation. So now, typically at this time, we do a little media flashback of what I did this week as far as any media hits that I did. And I did do one with Newsmax, and I didn't even look to see what I talked about this week. But anyway, I figured that I'd change it up a little bit because it is indeed, this is the month of February, and it is Black History Month, and me being a black girl, I thought that I would, for those of you who haven't been to any of my social media yet, or haven't been to 98.7 The Coast's page yet and seen my picture, I happen to be, I call myself brown because I just believe in like accuracy in reporting. And when I see myself, I see a brown person, but I'm told by, I don't know, the woke people that I'm not allowed to call myself brown, which I think is weird because, like, I guess, like, only certain people are allowed to call themselves brown, but that's like a conversation for a different show. I think that's like very strange. I feel like you should be able to call yourself whatever color you are. But I don't know. Like, I don't get all these, like, assignments and stuff like that. Like, you're not allowed to like, just be, like, I don't know, be in, like, reality. You're not allowed to live there, apparently. That's not, like, a space that you're allowed to live in some places. Which I don't, I really am not trying to be flippant. I know it sounds like I'm trying to be flippant, but I'm not. I'm honestly not. Like, when I look in the mirror, like, I have black pens. I have a black comb. The front of my phone is black, and I'm not that color. So I don't see myself as a black person. Does that sound weird? Anyway, I don't think it sounds very weird. So, like, a lot of times I refer to myself as brown. Like, when I go buy foundation for my face, I go buy brown makeup because that's what color I am. But I digress. It's Black History Month. That's what I was getting to in the opening. So now, listen, if this is your first time listening to the show, like, the whole show is not going to be like this. Like, don't get turned off. Typically, I do a little recap and I do a lot of news, but it's February and it's Black History Month. And because I have this platform, and if this is your first time listening to me, you also should know that I'm politically on the right. I don't hide that, but this is I don't want to use the word safe space because I know that definitely means something if you truly believe in safe spaces. So it might not really be a safe space, but, like, it's as safe as it can be for me if you feel safe around a Republican. If you feel safe around a Republican who happens to be brown, it's as safe as it can possibly be for you. I don't know how safe that is. I know some people feel very unsafe by the fact that I exist. I understand that. I don't understand. I understand intellectually that is a thing. I don't understand why. And if somebody wants to come on the show and explain that to me, like, all jokes aside, I would absolutely love to have that conversation. And if you want to if you're like a politico on the left, like you're a Democrat and active in politics, and you want to have that discussion, love to have that policy discussion, particularly if it has anything to do with money and you're involved in anything policy-wise and you want to have that discussion, reach out to me, like, on Twitter @MoneyTalkMel, or my email address @moneytalkwithmelanie@gmail.com. Seriously, love to have you on the show and have that discussion. Like, I'm not like joking about that, because there are some things that I don't understand about that. No, all kidding aside. But anyway, that's it. So here's listen, I think Black History Month is super important. It's important that Black historical figures are acknowledged and highlighted, obviously, and that we talk, particularly since, this country has a history of, leaving some very important things out of the history books and etc. Here's my beef that I do have with Black History Month. Now that we have Black History Month and we are putting Black figures in history books, we're still leaving some stuff out. For example, I'll just give you an example. Justice Clarence Thomas, for example, blatantly left out of the African American Museum in D.C. Black, Supreme Court justice, kind of majorly important, huge diss. Like, came out of a broken family from brutal poverty in the segregated South, becomes a United States Supreme Court judge. He is often left out of Black History Month when it comes to celebrating Black history figures. Why? Because he's a Republican, because he's on a conservative side. By the way, he's the longest serving Supreme Court justice right now as we speak. Who else? Have you ever heard of economist Thomas Sowell? Some of you have probably never heard that name. He's a world-renowned economist. Black economist, world renowned, but he's on the right. Somebody who should be looked up to. A black person who should be revered. He's in his 90s. Very well known in economic and political circles. Children should know about him, but they don't. You never see his picture anywhere when it comes to Black History Month. Why? Because he's on the right. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. She's another one. Do you ever see her picture up in schools when it comes to Black History Month? Do you ever see her on any specials in the media? When it comes to Black History Month, do you ever see anybody talking about her? Do you know that Condoleezza Rice speaks 6 languages fluently? Do you know that she was the first African American woman to ever be Secretary of State? Do you know that she's also a classical concert pianist? Yeah. Do you know that she grew up in the segregated South? All of that success. We should be speaking victory into black kids, and using someone like Condoleezza Rice or Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas or economist Thomas Sowell as examples. But why are they not examples? Why does only Barack Obama qualify? And nothing against Barack Obama. He should totally be included in that conversation. Obviously. Elected to president twice, of course he should be in that conversation. But if we're going to truly be inclusive, if we're going to truly be diverse, then we should have diversity of thought as well. Like, are we going to be diverse or not? Are we going to have equality or not? And if we're going to do that, then we need to include diversity of thought as well. How about Winsome Sears of Virginia, who is now the first black governor, it's not called a deputy governor. Why is it escaping me right now? It's when you're the second to the governor, and I can't call it right now. It's slipping. It's COVID brain. It's slipping my mind. But anyway, she's second to the governor now, and she's the first African-American one in Virginia. Winsome Sears. She's a black woman. I bet you, look in your schools, look around on TV, in the media, as we're celebrating Black History Month. See how many people will be celebrating her on social media. Anywhere. See if any. She was a single mother, put herself through school. Lieutenant governor. That's it. I knew it would come to me. She's first black lieutenant governor in Virginia. See how many people will be talking about her. But she's a Republican. I can guarantee you she will not be celebrated. Last name, one of my favorites. I actually met him. If you go to my social media, if you are privileged to know my super secret personal Facebook page, you'll be able to find this picture. I don't give up my super secret personal Facebook page for a plethora of reasons. But if you know it, you'll see a picture of me and the one and only Dr. Ben Carson, because I'm a major fangirl of Dr. Ben Carson. Let's talk about him. Pediatric brain surgeon. You know how there's a saying that is well, it's not like it's brain surgery. Well, yeah. Like he can pretty much do anything. If you can operate on a baby's brain in utero, I think you're pretty smart. Did you know that his mother couldn't read and that he grew up without a father in the home? And he grew up to be a pediatric brain surgeon. Yeah. But how many conversations do you hear about Dr. Ben Carson when it comes to Black History Month? You don't hear a lot. Why? Only because of his political beliefs. So that's my beef. My only beef with Black History Month is that it's not really, we only celebrate certain people, and it's not cool. Like, let's be equal like truly equal. Let's be open to everyone. Let's celebrate the Barack Obamas as well as the Clarence Thomases. Let's celebrate the Michelle Obamas and the Winsome Sears. You know, let's celebrate everybody because everyone has something to offer. We all have something to offer in this world. And I think the world will be a better place. And so happy Black History Month. It's going to get, listen, if you were offended by this first segment, hang on tight. It's going to be cool. We're going to talk about like money and economics and stuff. And it's going to be all good. Hang on tight. But it's Black History Month, and I have this platform, and I felt like it just needed to be said. If you have any nasty or rude comments or happy comments or whatever, you can tweet me at Money Talk Mel. Or leave a comment on my Facebook page at Money Talk with Melanie. We'll be right back with my first guest, Natasha Miller, in one moment.
Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and our first hour this evening, we have business growth evangelist, Natasha Miller. She's going to speak to us this evening about how to develop our highest potential despite our circumstances. So I'm very excited to talk to her this evening, and without further ado, Ms. Natasha Miller, how are you this evening?
Hey there, I'm really good. Good to hear from you.
Oh, it's great. It's great to talk to you this evening. I am so glad to have you on the show. I thought it was a great topic to talk about, something really encouraging to discuss this evening. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at my producer who's having a little physical issue here.
Oh, no.
He's like knocking stuff over in here. It's hilarious. I'm sorry. You're really not like in radio, not supposed to acknowledge what's going on around you. And I totally do that all the time. One of these days I'm going to get in trouble. Somebody's going to send me like a text or something and say, what are you doing? Why are you talking about that? Anyway, it's very nice to talk to you this evening. I would love for you to tell the audience a bit about your background and about yourself and how you came to be a guest on radio shows and podcasts.
Oh, yeah, well, that's a long story, but I started my life out in Des Moines, Iowa. I was a orchestra nerd, playing the violin, moved to singing jazz, performing and recording 7 CDs and touring. Then I created this business that I've had for the last 20 years called Entire Productions. And now I have a book coming out in March, which is how I got connected with you. But I really do like to share my story in hopes that it will impact people positively if they're not getting to where they're supposed to be or where they want to be, or they don't feel like they have access or the ability to move forward.
Interesting. I kind of feel like people feel like that all the time, right? Maybe, or is that just me?
You know what? I feel like that a lot as well, even with the successes that I've had. So that imposter syndrome or that, I'm not good enough definitely seeps into my brain. But I just step around it, step over it, step around it, stomp on it, whatever I need to do.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Whenever I'm going to interview someone, I get asked this all the time, like, how do you come up with your questions when you're going to interview a guest? Because this is quiet as it's kept. I didn't go to school for journalism or anything like that. Like, somebody was just like, you have a radio voice, you should have a radio show. And I was like, oh, why not? So I said, sure, put me behind a mic, I got this. So, but I just work backward and think, like, what do I want to know? So let's start off with this. What do you even mean when you say reach your full potential or reach your highest potential? Like, what does that even mean? Because anybody who's seen like one episode of American Idol knows that means different things to different people, right?
Sure, of course, yes. So I think that we have so much more capacity. Even me, I certainly haven't, gotten to the tip top of my fullest potential, but I am sure on a rocket ship trying to figure out what the top is. And I think, we don't, as human beings in general, we don't take the responsibility to figure out who we are and what our most incredible gifts are, in the world, and really push forward. A lot of people, and I've been this way throughout my life, it's definitely in phases, rest on their laurels. They're comfortable. They might not want to push through. Sometimes it's awkward. It's embarrassing. Sometimes it's sad because there's some no's and failures that come along with it. But you have to encounter those in order to move forward.
That's true. You do. You really do have to encounter some no's. Now,
you can't walk sideways for the rest of your life.
That is very true. Now, what happens to me, which I think is weird, I think it's very strange, is that people make assumptions about what I can do, even though I've never done it before.
Well, they're probably right.
This is what I've been doing. So here's what's strange, right? So people will ask me to do something because they assume that I do it, and I just tell them, yeah, I do it. And then I just go do it.
Until you make it so, right?
Yeah.
Until you make it so and learn along the way.
Yep. That's exactly it. But I think it's
don't do that if you're, trying to be a surgeon. But
well, I was going to say, if someone's like, hey, could you operate on this person's brain? And then no. Yeah, I'll YouTube it. No problem. No, I can do that. So what do you find that's most enjoyable about the entrepreneurship thing? I really admire people who run their own businesses.
Yeah.
What do you like about it?
The thing that really fills me up, it's not that I'm not working for someone else or that I get to work on my own or any of those things. It's not the money. It is the ability to be as creative every single day as I want and as I need to be. And sometimes, I get the little shiny object syndrome happening and I get kind of taken off base, but I can always go back to where I need to go to get the things done I need to get done. But I get to do whatever I want to do at any time. I'm not beholden to a time card or a time clock, and I have been. I know what that feels like. I have to be beholden to my clients and to the people that we serve, but we're doing what we love to do. So it's easy. Well, it's easy-ish.
Now, working without the safety net of a salary doesn't freak you out?
It never has. But let me tell you this. Okay, so I had a nice salary, and I lived in a fairly nice home. It was rented. It had 3 bedrooms and 1 bath, a nice yard. And when I decided to go out on my own, first of all as a performing musician and then as an entrepreneur, I knew that I didn't want the pressure of having to pay a bigger rent. So I had a young daughter. I had a 5-year-old daughter. She and I moved into a 1-bedroom apartment, which I like to say was a garden apartment. She likes to remind me it was a basement apartment. And, I prepared for not possibly having the same income that I had before. And you know what? Didn't bother me one bit. Wasn't embarrassed. Didn't have to keep up with the Joneses. I was doing better than the Joneses because you know what I was doing? What I loved. And I had a smaller place, and guess what? I made about the same amount of money in that first year. I didn't know for sure. And we stayed there for a year or a year and a half later and didn't move because we loved it so much. 1 bedroom with a 5-year-old.
Wow. So now...
Yeah. You have to give up stuff, but I don't look at it as giving it up. I look at it as transitioning to something different.
Okay. So mindset definitely contributes to how you deal with that.
Yeah.
So now, you've been an entrepreneur for about 20 years now, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is the most difficult part about it?
So I have a staff. I have a team of people, and they're amazing. And over the years, I've learned how to identify people, interview them, hire them, develop them, onboard them, and all of that. But people are human beings with lots of emotions and flaws and good days and bad days. And so I think if you ask any entrepreneur, the hardest part of running a business is the people, finding the right people, but also making sure the culture, the core values, everyone is really just rowing the boat in the same direction and being kind and respectful to each other, to your vendors, to your clients.
Ooh, that has to be the hardest part.
It's the hardest part.
Yikes.
And I didn't get it right very well all the time, especially in the beginning. I'm getting it right more now. But it's 20 years later.
Well, yeah, like because people, like people are the word, like the one thing, like there are some things about teaching, like I'm an educator, and there's some things. There are some things that can be tough. But one of the things that I do enjoy is that I'm by myself. Like I'm with kids. Don't get me wrong, but as far as how I'm working alone. I'm a solo act, and I like that.
Well, let me tell you this. So people will be surprised at this. I am a very outgoing person. I can do anything out loud in front of big groups of people. I've sung the national anthem for 40,000 people at the San Francisco Giants game, for instance.
Wow.
But I am a severe introvert. So I not only like being alone for long periods of time, I need to be.
Nice. I think I saw somewhere, maybe on your LinkedIn page, said outgoing introvert. I thought that was pretty funny.
It's not even an oxymoron, right? It really is who I am.
That's outstanding. We are coming up against a break. I have lots more questions for you. I'm enjoying this conversation very much. We are on with our guest for the first hour, Natasha Miller, the outgoing introvert, business growth evangelist, Natasha Miller. We are talking to her this evening about reaching our highest potential and overcoming our circumstances. Just having a great conversation with her this evening. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette, and we are on with Natasha Miller. We are talking about reaching your highest potential and succeeding despite your circumstances. And Natasha has overcome quite a bit and done quite a bit. I love that she calls herself an outgoing introvert. I think that is amusing. And you say that it's not an oxymoron at all. Why do you say that it's not an oxymoron?
I think people think introverts are shy, and that's just not part of the definition. So I think people just have the wrong idea of what that word means, and it's so prevalent that they think that, oh, that's opposite, and that's funny and cute. And I actually think it's funny and cute, too. Otherwise, I really wouldn't put it on my LinkedIn. But yeah, people are very surprised when they find out that I need to spend as much time alone, and again, I really need that. It's not that I prefer it, although I do. It's the way I recharge.
There's nothing wrong with people think. At least I've run into people who think it's weird to spend time alone. I do not think it's weird at all. As a matter of fact, I read this book years ago. I think I was in my 20s when I read it, called Be Your Own Best Friend. And yeah, and it basically talked about, like, if you don't want to spend time with you, then why would anybody else want to spend time with you? Was basically the gist of the book. Was, you need to spend time with yourself. It's a good idea.
Yep.
You know, everybody should spend some time with yourself and with your own thoughts and whatnot. It's a good idea. So now let me ask you this. In 20 years, I'm sure there's some mistakes that you've made in business and in your career that you were like, yeah, I could have done a better job there. Is there anything like that you'd like to share with the audience?
Again, I think my biggest mistakes blunders were having to do with people in the organization and how I thought I needed to handle situations, in addition to choosing the wrong people for the wrong reasons. But that was just my youth. I just didn't know how. It's a skill to source and qualify humans and find out. I mean, it is the number one thing that business owners, entrepreneurs cite as one of the most challenging things that they do. And I'm not special.
Because character is not something you can put on a resume, right? Like, that's not...
No, and people can be incredible for the interviews. They can be incredible, and they can actually think that they really are a suitable, person for the job, and then they get in it, and a couple months go by, and it's not necessarily so. If you don't have a big enough team to find a place where they actually do fit and they have the competency, and then you keep them there, then the rest of your team, if they don't say it to your face, they're thinking, what the heck is going on? And then things start to crumble. It's a thing. I didn't understand it until I lived it. It was experience that I needed.
Interesting. I don't miss that part of working in an office. That part I don't miss. That's not good. Mm-hmm. It just isn't. Let me ask you this about reaching your full potential. How do you feel about how fear affects people not reaching their full potential? Do you think that plays a role?
Absolutely, yes. Fear, lack of excitement, or lack of direction, not having felt what it feels like to put yourself in a position of vulnerability and then overcoming that and then seeing what's on the other side is something that I think keeps people. Also, laziness. Not everybody that isn't reaching their full potential is lazy. And maybe I shouldn't say lazy, and maybe I should say comfortable instead. But I think the fear, every day I have fears, questions about, should I really be doing this? Do I have the right? Am I good enough? And sometimes when those feelings really start to build up and I start getting tired and ornery, now I know, I'm 50 years old, I know, to stop thinking about it for a while. You need a rest. You can't obsess over it. Get some rest, wake up, and let's try it again.
Right.
The next day.
Right.
And before, I would have panicked about it, gone over and up, the spiraling down, the no, I'm not good enough, no, I have no business doing that, I don't have access to that, who am I to say, all those things I used to do. And now I'm like, I'm starting that reel again in my head. I gotta let it go. We're putting it down, and we're gonna reapproach with a fresh mind and a fresh attitude.
Yes. Sometimes you just have to put a period at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. You're like, it's the end of the day. It's wine o'clock. And, it's the end. it's the end of the day. Like, my mind is done. And, we're going to have to just restart tomorrow. That's it.
I would also say, that is good self-talk once you've gotten to that point in your life. If you need help getting to that point, then I think, talking to friends, journaling, seeing a therapist if you can, all those things really help move you toward the ability to self-monitor and self-talk in the positive way.
I think that age does help.
Yeah.
In a way, because you have to have experienced kind of getting to the other side to know that actually when you get to the other side, it's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right.
Yes, and I have a 26-year-old daughter. She hears me going through my life, and sometimes she hears these interviews. She prefers not to. I'm not sure that, I don't know how much upside she's going to get in these thoughts and these feelings and these experiences watching me go through them. She may have to go through the same old stuff, even though I could have paved the way for her. So that means the people listening, hopefully this gives you, a nudge or a shove toward the way you want to go, the direction you want to go. But you also might have to just, flail about a little bit on your own.
But maybe they'll get it quicker, though. Like maybe
Hopefully.
People who are listening to this will get it faster. Like it won't take them as long. Like as soon as they go through their first or second experience, as opposed to their 20th. Like maybe what you or I may have gone through. Then
there was a time in my life where I did just keep stepping in it, continuing to do the stupid thing that had the same result.
Relatable,
over
yes.
And over. Oh my God. May that never happen to me again.
And then you're like, for real? We're here again?
Yeah.
So now, did you have, speaking of overcoming circumstances, is there a major setback that pops up in your head as far as business or your career that you had, and then can you describe that, and then how you bounced back from that?
Well, I mean, the biggest setback I had in my life was how I grew up in a very dysfunctional family with a mother that treated me terribly. Really, the one person that's supposed to love and protect you and keep you safe was the person that was harming me. And when you grow up, I was there until I was 16, and then I've been on my own since then. That's a lot to overcome. It took, another 25 years to get to a place where, I'm much healthier. But, that's the biggest obstacle. There have been plenty more inflection points, and a handful of them, the horrible ones and the incredible ones, are in the book that I wrote, Relentless, that's coming out in March. I didn't put everything in there. I mean, it'd be like a 1,000-page book. But, I would say that, not being protected is the biggest obstacle that I've had to overcome. And I have recently, in the last maybe 2 years, really gotten to the place where almost every other second of every day isn't fueled by trying to get over it.
I was just about to say, because when you have a childhood, anywhere where you feel unprotected, then it's almost like you forever feel unprotected.
Yeah.
And that is, it's hard to describe to someone that feeling of being unsafe. It's hard to articulate what it feels like to not feel safe, to never feel safe.
Okay, so let me back this up and say, hopefully it will get even better than now, but now is so much more satisfying to me with where I feel confident and safe. But there are moments, there's definitely things that are ingrained within me that might be referred to as PTSD. But again, I try to remind myself that is from your past. That reaction is from your past. You're going to be fine. No one's coming for you. Like no one's trying to hurt you.
Now, what I find to be super ironic, and this is just my experience, and now having interviewed so many people and read so many different interviews and bios and profiles of people, is that it seems to me, or at least it's been my experience, that many successful people go one of two ways. Or many people, just people in general, who experience trauma or issues, or however you'd like to describe it, or insecurities that appear to super have it together, when you peel back the curtain, there's always something.
Oh, there's always something.
And the reason why they look like they have it together is because there's so much stuff. And that's why they look like they have it. Like, the reason why they look like why it looks like that is because they want it to look like that because there's so much stuff. Yep. That's why.
I mean, I was one of those
that's
people.
Why. Right.
Yeah. I still may be. I mean, I'm definitely not perfect. I'm just so much further into my story and who I really was put on this earth to be that I'm not necessarily faking it as much. And honestly, I didn't talk about what I talk about in this book up until 2 or 3 years ago. And when I started practicing saying some of the things out loud, I was like, I can't, I don't, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe too soon.
But I think when you come to realize that you really stop. Like, I wish the kids these days who really idolize these influencers and things like that, like, really understood what they were watching, because they don't understand what they're looking at.
They don't. But, and you know this, and the kids may not be understanding this, but there are a lot of TikTok and YouTube young people, influencers, that are not well mentally. Right. You would never be able to tell. And then, you know, what happens to them, and I don't really think that, you know, saying it on the air is fair, but, you know, every other day there's something in the news about someone like that. Right.
And I think those of us, you know, in a certain age group waving our canes in the air are not necessarily surprised, unfortunately. But you know, the kids are devastated because they don't really understand what it is that they're looking at, which is unfortunate. How many minutes? How long do I have left?
Oh, you have
how much time? Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. All right. I wasn't sure. Okay. So I want to ask you some things from the practical side of being super successful. Things like focus and planning and that kind of stuff. So, big picture, and some of this stuff, when I was doing research for this interview today, I was like, I really want to ask her about this, especially because these are things that I also have problems with, and I'm sure that people in my audience probably have the same issues when it comes to just like being your best, focusing on the big picture. How do you even decide what the big picture is? Like, it seems like there can be a lot of big pictures, right?
Yeah. Right, and there are, and there should be, but you need to prioritize what is the biggest for the time that you're doing it. And I want to tell you right now, I am not being successful at that right now because I am launching a book. Then I, of course, had to create a workbook that goes with this workshop I'm teaching, and I'm doing an in-person live gala performance as well as a book launch, you know, virtually in the metaverse. Like, too much.
So which one's the big picture now? Which one is the...
Exactly. But they all have to do with the same thing. I reason with myself, but I'm killing myself. And I'm really pushing my mental ability, which affects my, you know, physical well-being. And I need to step back a little bit. But I'm also very disciplined, and I think that comes from the classical violin training I had in the past. I don't know where it comes from. You just have to be disciplined to practice the violin for 6 to 8 hours a day.
And when all those things are, I can relate to that too. All those things are intertwined, and that's what happens when you have some success, right? Like, it starts to build on itself in different directions, and it's kind of hard to figure out where to concentrate.
Now, for me, I'm going to just kind of give myself a way out of this conversation. So here's the key. If you're able to, if you have the bandwidth, if you have the funds, bringing a team in to help you and you delegating is how you can do multiple things at one time.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with this book launch. I'm still killing myself over it and all the things that I want to do with it. But it's so much fun. It's so creative for me. I might be addicted.
But you have to decide, in my opinion, you have to be able to kind of discern what is the mundane. Like really what stuff is mundane that you can let go and have somebody else do it.
Okay, so I'm going to admit another thing. One thing I had on my 25-point master marketing plan was to release an NFT along with the book.
Girl!
But I'm proud to say I ditched that, and I realized that my audience wasn't ready for that.
If you didn't, I would have came over to your house and crossed it off the list myself.
Now, wait a minute. It may reappear in 6 months' time.
Yes.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yes.
Check back.
It's a good goal. It's a good goal. It's a great goal, as a matter of fact. That's a good one.
So I did remove something from the plan that would have really caused me more pain and anguish.
That's fantastic. Okay, that's fantastic. Oh my gosh. Talk about goals. Okay, so tell the audience where they can buy the book, where they can follow you on social media, if they want to get assistance from you, avail themselves of your services, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the website is official, Natashamiller.com, and you can go to the /book to get to the book page, but you'll see all of the craziness up there. And the book is, I think it's up on Amazon for pre-sale right now.
Excellent. And what's the name of the book?
Relentless, Homeless Teen to Achieving the Entrepreneur Dream.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Natasha Miller. Excellent talking to you.
Thank you. This was fun, and I hope that it was valuable to you and everyone listening, as well as your producer.
Yes, thank you. Yes, John is a rock star. We love him. Make sure I'm going to tag you in the podcast when it posts, which should be tomorrow or Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks so much. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
All right. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Money Talk with Melanie features entrepreneurs, CEOs, and politicos who are experts in their fields. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And if you missed the first hour, we had our first guest was Natasha Miller, and she talked to us about how to reach your highest potential and succeed despite your circumstances. Really great guest. So if you missed that first hour, be sure to pick up the podcast on any of my social media or on 98.7 The Coast website. The podcast should be posted sometime tomorrow, probably by tomorrow night or Saturday at the latest. They've been really good about that, or on any of my social media, on at Money Talk Mel, or on my Facebook page at Money Talk with Melanie. You should be able to pick up the podcast, and that's the first hour. The second hour around 8:20 in a few minutes. We're going to have Mariusz Skonieczny. Yeah, right, Mel. I've been practicing that name for like 2 days now, and still, Mariusz Skonieczny is going to talk to us about whether or not the Fed can really fight inflation. If you listen to the news, if you listen closely, if you're like a nerd like me, and you listen closely to what the news and politicians are saying about inflation, politicians will give you the impression that they can really control inflation, and what the Fed really does affect inflation, and Mariusz is going to tell us whether or not that's true. I'm going to have a nice chat about what inflation is and what it isn't, and whether or not politicians truly do control it. So anyway, we're going to have a nice chat about that. We didn't get to the news in the first segment of the first hour because I ranted about the wokeness of Black History Month for like the first 10 minutes. So if you I'm not sorry though. Like if you were expecting an apology, yeah, it's not going to happen. But if you missed that, you should also go back to the podcast, to the beginning of the podcast, and listen to it. And if you agreed or disagreed or whatever, tweet me, email me, whatever. Leave me a note on my Facebook page. I'm truly interested in varying opinions. I like to have intelligent interchange of ideas. I think it's a very good idea. I don't understand people who don't like to have it. I don't understand people who like to live in echo chambers. I do not understand that. On both sides of the aisle, I don't get that. Like, I have people on my social media who are like, why do you allow liberals on your page? Like, as I have people who are Democrats or who are like just outright like super lefties, and I'm not. And I have some of my friends who are on the same side of the aisle that I am, who are like, why do you allow those people on your page? And I'm like, because if I don't, then my social media will be an echo chamber, and then we'll just be just all listening to our own thoughts. And in my opinion, that is not super healthy. That's not healthy if we're all just listening to our own thoughts and we're not listening to a diversity of opinion. That's not healthy. Like, that's not, I don't think it's healthy for anybody to do that. I don't think it's healthy for us on the right to do that. I don't think it's healthy for people on the left to do that. Like, we should be listening to each other. That's just one girl's opinion. We should be listening to each other. Even if we're going to ultimately disagree, we should still have our ears open and be listening to each other, even if we disagree. Now, I also think that the conversation should be intelligent and well-informed. That's where we tend to have a problem. I think that's where I feel like people on the right just tend to over intellectualize, and that's why people don't like us. Because we, like, when I tell people, like, people are like, why do you feel the way you do? And like, the Bible, the Constitution, and stuff like, and like the law, and then people get mad at me for saying that. I'm like, and they'll be like, well, the Bible says blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, well, did you read the entire chapter? And they'll be like, what? And then they get mad at me. And I'm like, well, did you read the entire Constitution? Did you read the entire article of the Constitution? Do you know what that means? And then they'll get mad at me and we'll have like a fight. And that's what happens. But anyway, speaking of me being mad, I was looking at news articles today. I saw this article. Now, I often read like Business Insider because I'm a nerd and stuff like that. And I saw this article today that really ticked me off. So get this. Now, let me say this. Money is money, right? It's just money. Like, budgeting is a really simple concept. It's money in, money out. You do one of two things with money when it comes to how much money you have. You either grow your money or you cut down on your money. Like, it's you know, in its most simplistic form when it comes to budgeting. If you need more money, you are going to do one of two things. You either need to bring more money in or you need to cut some things. That's how the concept works. But anyway, so I ran into this article in Business Insider, and the article is entitled 4 Outdated Pieces of Money Advice Millennials and Gen Zers Don't Listen to. According to, I couldn't roll my eyes hard enough when I got to this part. According to a 27-year-old who teaches them on TikTok. Oh, well, it's taught on TikTok after all. Now remember, I teach economics and financial literacy. So I was like, oh, well, I must give this a read. So let's just see what millennials and Gen Zers are just so upset about, which is outdated. Let's just see what this expert has to say. And of course, the first thing I see that just ticked me off said basically one of the first things it said, get a second job to pay down debt. They basically weren't into that. Oh, we're not really into working in order to bring in more money. Really? You're not? You're not into working? Really? Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. The advice to get a second job falls on deaf ears when young people are fed up with how expensive it is to do the same thing their parents did when they were young. And I think the reason why this ticks me off is because it just seems to be, I'm waving my old lady cane in the air, it just seems to be indicative of the attitude of younger people today. I don't care if I sound old. I'm sorry. Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, nobody wants to work. I was saying this to one of my classes the other day. Like, I think it is amazing to me that a lot of my students go home and do nothing after school. How? Like, I've been working since I was like 15. Like, I went home, did homework, and went to work. Like, every day after school. And my students go home and do nothing. They do not work. Like, what? Yeah, and apparently, the Gen Zers, not into it. What do you mean get a second job to pay down debt? That's a thing? Yeah, that's a thing that people do. That's how parents got to do stuff. Like, they worked. This was another one that they found oh so offensive. Stop eating out to save money. Yeah. I hated that advice. Did you? You did? You hated that advice? Let me tell you something. You ever get so mad you get a headache? I was reading this article, and it was making me so mad, like, it gave me a headache. I was like, are you serious right now? Oh, dear Lord. This chick's got like a zillion followers on TikTok. She did not like this advice. Stop eating out to save money. It was a real turnoff. I did not like this. I mean, I could cut down on eating out, but we still prefer to keep a realistic amount of money set aside to eat out with our friends and simply enjoy our lives. Do you? I'm sure that you do. The third one, stay loyal to your full-time job. Millennials and Gen Zers are the generations that pioneered the Great Resignation. Loyalty's not really a thing for them. Like, yeah, that and the Great Resignation, if you're not familiar, is the movement that caused workers across industries to leave their jobs and demand more pay, more benefits, and better treatment. The Gen Zers and the Millennials are also the group. Those are the two groups that legit graduate from college and like think they could just bounce out of college with a 4-year degree and right into a corner office and a 6-figure salary. Like, no, that's not the way it works, young ones. It's not the way, no. Like, your parents did this to you. Is that who did it? Somebody tell me who did this to you all. That is not how any of this works. But yeah, so they didn't feel as though that advice was awesome. Being loyal does not pay, according to this advisor on TikTok. I mean, not for nothing, she ain't wrong. I mean, I'm mad about this advice, but she's not wrong about that. But this is the fact that, like, you still need to do it. Come on now. And then number 4, they don't agree that all debt is bad. Dear God. Because younger generations are often strapped down by student loan debt, they are often told that all kinds of debt should be repaid immediately, or that all kinds of debt should be avoided altogether. She argues we need to start normalizing debt. So, listen, if those of us who are old school, the older generation, we're the Gen Xers, we're old school. We completely disagree with all 4 of these quote-unquote outdated pieces of money advice. This is what we're dealing with. These are the folks that are going to be taking care of us. I hope that your 401ks and your investments are all up to date, because this is what we got. This is what we got. This is what we got going on. I got so mad when I read this. Here's part of the reason why I was mad. You're 27. Like, where do you get the nerve? Where'd you get the experience? What? What is your reference? What's your frame of reference for saying that you are right and we are wrong? That's the part that I can't seem to, that I don't understand. Like, years of study and information, and you people go on TikTok and are like, you guys are wrong. You guys are all wrong. I don't understand. I don't get it. But whatever, fine. Just so you know, there's a best day of the week to buy gas, according to Gas Buddy. Now, in New Jersey, it's Tuesday. But if you go on this app called Gas Buddy, which you can find on the interwebs, if you are listening to this as a podcast and you are not in New Jersey, you can go on Gas Buddy and find out what day of the week is best for you. But if you are here in New Jersey, it's Tuesday, just FYI. So buy gas on Tuesdays and you can get a better price. I don't know. I'm really bad with stuff like this. I'm really terrible. Like, I'm terrible with, like, the CVS coupons where you get stuff off. I'm really like the stuff that they email you and you can get a percentage of. I'm terrible at, like, all of that stuff. I'm really just awful. But listen, I read articles all the time about people who, like, swear by that stuff and save tons of money. They're probably, like, wealthy now. Ran across this other article. Now, if you work for the public, this is not going to apply. Like me, I'm an educator. One of the things that irritates me about working for the public is that you can't negotiate your own salary. I used to work for a private entity, and I always negotiated my own salary, and I did quite well that way. But now I can't, and it's kind of a bummer, but that's life. But 6 ways to figure out how much you should be getting paid before you negotiate your salary or a raise. I think a lot of people don't do this. Like, you go, particularly women, statistics, ladies, listen up, statistics say that women tend not to do what's called stretching. What do I mean by stretching? We don't apply for jobs that we are slightly underqualified for. Now, as women, no offense, guys, it probably does not surprise us, ladies, that men are more apt to apply for jobs for which they are underqualified. We've probably dated some of them. That's a joke. Just kidding. I'm not really kidding. Anyway, but seriously, ladies don't stretch. We don't do, and you actually can get jobs, believe it or not. HR people will hire people that are missing a thing or two, that are just not absolutely perfectly, don't have every single thing that they have listed, every single preference. You can get hired, but men are more likely to stretch than women are. So women, start stretching a little bit. But here are some things, 6 ways that you can figure out how much you should be getting paid. And always negotiate. That's another thing that women don't do that men usually do. Men will usually try to negotiate their salary. Women will usually say how much is the job, and they'll just take that money. Don't do that. Negotiate. Okay, so check the local job listings, especially if you're moving. If you're moving to another state or something, always check that out. See what they're paying locally. See if HR is required to tell you. Quite honestly, whenever I see a listing and the salary's not listed, I assume that it sucks and move on. Now, I might be wrong about that. I might be, you know what they say about assuming. Never a good thing. But I just assume, like, if they're not putting the salary, two tells, right? They don't list the salary and they highlight how wonderful the benefits are. I'm like, yeah, then it's probably minimum wage or something. No, thank you. Next. Research online salary databases. That's kind of common sense. Usually do that. Talk to your colleagues. Sure. Can do that. Tap into your extended network. That's a good idea. And ask your future coworkers. Those are all good ideas. And then you always want to make sure you negotiate. Do negotiate. I know a lot of people who don't do that, but I hang around a lot of bad, you-know-what women that always negotiate. I have a saying. It's an old saying, actually. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Remember that. Never be the smartest person in the room. Now, switching gears just a little bit. Are you looking for Mr. Right or Ms. Right? Are you? Are you? Well, if you own cryptocurrency, you may be more desirable on the dating scene, according to a recent study, and this is according to a report by CNBC. I'll tell you what, these writers, I wonder how much they get paid to write this stuff. And this is, of course, in the wake of the pandemic. Singles are looking for a partner in good financial standing. I have news. That's not just in the wake of the pandemic. Who's not looking for a partner in good financial standing? Who's looking for a broke partner? Anyone? Anyone? Anyway, in the wake of the pandemic, that's what they're saying. Singles are looking for a partner in good financial standing. And if you have anybody looked at crypto lately? Okay, anyway. But that doesn't mean having money in the bank. These days, it means your investments in digital currencies that can set you apart. And Valentine's Day is coming up, so you want to show that you are not only financially stable, but you are financially savvy. So apparently in this survey, 33% of Americans say they'd be more likely to go on a date with someone who mentioned crypto assets in their online dating profile. Really? Really? I cannot. Okay. But yeah, apparently that's a thing. This is what we're doing. This is what we're doing. Out here. People are... What? Okay. Very rarely am I rendered speechless over things like, but not there, because you can mention anything in a dating profile. I don't know how many people are listening that are single. Have you seen dating profiles recently? People just say anything. Okay, but I guess if you're trading crypto, that looks super attractive. I don't know. It looks crazy to me. Now, do I have time to say one more thing, John? I have time to say one more thing. Okay. I love Shaquille O'Neal for a couple of reasons. Not because I'm a huge basketball fan, because I'm not like really a sports chick, but he's a great business guy. Like, I love the fact that he's like an athlete turned entrepreneur. That's fantastic. Like, if he was single and had that on his dating profile, I'd be in, right? So, but he said something that I thought was real dumb the other day. You have to, sandwich criticism, right? So I had to start out with something positive. So the other day, I saw this article called in Essentially Sports, and he was talking about the gender pay gap in basketball, and he says that certain guys are not worth it, and they're making $40 million, and then you got the girls only making $700,000, and that's not right. And I'm like, Shaquille, you are an entrepreneur. You're a capitalist. You know good and darn well why the women are only making $700,000. It's capitalism. Have you anybody who's watched the NBA and watched the WNBA knows that there is a huge, and I'm not, trying to be mean to the girls, but anybody who's watched guys basketball and then watched girls basketball, there is a difference. And there's a difference in revenue. if the WNBA was taking in the same kind of revenue that the NBA was taking in, and then they were only paying them $700,000, then he would have a valid point. But I am sure that is not the case. So, like, come on, Shaquille. So I just had to say that about Shaquille. But I still love you, boo. You all right. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. Our 8 o'clock hour guest is Mariusz Skonieczny, and he's going to talk to us about whether or not the Fed can fight inflation. We'll be back on the other side of the break.
Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie. Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I'm your host, Melanie Collette. And for our second hour guest, we have Mariusz Skonieczny. And he's going to talk to us about whether or not the Fed can actually fight inflation. I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. I can't wait to have him talk to us about this topic because you hear so much about inflation in the news these days. And we're going to break it down a little bit. So without further ado, Mariusz Skonieczny. I hope I pronounced your name correctly because I've been stressing about it since I booked you. I'm not going to lie.
I think you were close enough. I know that it's me.
Okay, great. How are you this evening?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on the show. Can you please tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah. So my name is Mariusz Skonieczny, and I invest full time in the stock market. I focus on small companies that are trading on secondary exchanges where there's not a lot of competition, and so that's what I do in a very short intro.
Okay, and what led you to start doing that? Do you have an education or background in economics, or did you start doing it as a hobby, or how did that start?
I do have a degree in finance, but most of the stuff that I do, I learned on my own because I am interested in learning about how businesses operate, what makes a good business, what makes a bad business, because that's what ownership of stocks is all about. There's something behind every ticker symbol. There's a business. And if I can understand that business, then I can increase the chances of being successful as an investor.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I actually teach economics and financial literacy myself, and I was just teaching the kids a little bit, the very basics about the stock market last week. And that was essentially what I told them about the stock market is exactly what you just said. So I ran across your video about inflation, and of course, inflation has been in the news quite a bit. And one of the things that I noticed is that one of the first things that you highlighted was that when we hear about inflation, particularly in the media, we hear much about price increases. And we hear inflation being defined by that, being defined as a price increase. And you did a pretty good job breaking down that's really only telling part of the story. Can you share with the audience kind of the rest of the story?
Well, inflation comes from the word inflate, and inflation has nothing to do with the increases in price, but everything to do with the inflation of the monetary supply. So think about inflating a balloon. That's where inflation comes from. So it has to do with how much money is in the circulation. And inflation, that's what inflation is. And inflation can lead to rise in prices, but it's not rise in prices. It can create a rise in prices, but it doesn't have to. And in today's world, we hear a lot about the inflation, but increase in the money supply is not the only reason why we see prices going up. Prices are going up because we have supply chain disruptions. Prices are going up because we have shortages of labor. People are sick or they can't go to work because of COVID. And so these are other factors of why we have price increases. And inflation, which is the increase in the money supply, is just one of the factors.
Right. And I think, definitely, I had never heard it explained that way before, as far as there being an increase in the money supply. Now, when you say there's an increase in the money supply, explain exactly what that means, because I think for sure that the audience at large doesn't even necessarily recognize that there is a money supply in the economy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so, I mean, our federal government is spending more money than it's bringing in and our federal government is always reckless. It always spends more than it brings in. It doesn't matter what year you go, they always find a way to spend more money than they come in and than they bring in. So then where does the difference comes in? Well, the difference comes in, they have to borrow the money. And so they issue bonds to do that. And if you and I buy those bonds, that's really not a problem. But if the Federal Reserve becomes the buyer, then they're monetizing the debt, which is another word for printing money. And when you have, more money chasing the same amount of goods or services out there, then each monetary unit loses money. And that's, again, one of the reasons why prices go up.
Exactly. And for the longest time, the government had a practice called quantitative easing, where they did that regularly. And that's supposed to be a really short-term practice. And they did it for a really long time.
Well, and they will continue doing this because, you see, the Federal Reserve is how would I call it, backed against the wall. They don't have a very good solution because now we all experience price increases and we all complain about it. And we had this kind of situation in the late 70s, early 80s, where inflation or price increases were getting out of control, and Federal Reserve did something about it. In other words, it pulled the liquidity out of the system by raising interest rates. And today, if they want to get a handle on this, the politicians are telling us that they will do something similar. Oh, the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates. But it's not that simple, because the federal government has $30 trillion worth of debt today. And if you increase interest rates, you increase the interest expense for the federal government, which is already running huge deficits. So even though they are saying they're going to increase interest rates to combat price increases, they can't really do that in a meaningful way without bankrupting the country.
Exactly. And so what I want the audience to understand, and I'm not totally sure that, and it's part of the reason why I wanted you to come on the show, because I am not sure, especially if you're not like a political junkie or an economics junkie, that the public at large completely understands that when we say that the government has debt, that it works very similarly to when we have debt. And the really scary thing is who we owe. Like China, who are not like super friendly people. It's not the same thing as owing MasterCard. Like, it's not, that's not a good look when you owe China a whole bunch of money.
Yeah, but I will say one thing, though. If you owe someone $10, it's your problem. If you owe them billions of dollars or trillions of dollars, it's their problem.
That's a good point. That's a good point. It's not a bad point. That is not a bad point, for sure. But yeah, it's a whole entire issue. So I wanted to make sure that the audience understood that. So would you agree that the increase in the money supply is certainly a factor, like you said, in the rise of the price of goods? Right, so if there's an increase in the money supply, then that's going to be a factor, and like you said, supply chain interruptions are also a cause of a rise in prices. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So it's very easy to say right now, oh, prices are increasing at 10% or more, and let's all freak out at the same time. But it's hard to say how much the price increases are caused by each of these elements. It's hard to tell because let's figure out or fix the supply chain disruptions, which I believe they're going to be fixed because they're going to be fixed. It's a fixable problem, and also labor shortages. Well, eventually people have to go to work and pay their bills. So I think that side is also going to get fixed. And once we get those two things fixed, then we can get a better handle of how much inflation or the increase in the money supply is causing the prices to increase.
Now, there's supposed to be a jobs report coming out tomorrow. It seems like the White House is already kind of trying to prepare us through the media for the jobs report to not be all that awesome. We're up against the break, but on the other side of the break, I'd like to get your thoughts on why you think people are not picking up their jobs just yet. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We're talking inflation. We'll be right back.
This is important because it's your money. Your money. Money Talk with Melanie. Money Talk with Melanie on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. We're just talking about inflation and just the different things that affect inflation. And inflation being more to inflation than just higher prices, and more things that affect higher prices than just more money being in the economy. So before the break, I was saying how there is a new jobs report coming out tomorrow, and that the White House was already kind of signaling, well, not kind of signaling, they're doing what they do, and just kind of letting us know that it wasn't going to be bad, and already kind of blaming the pandemic because the numbers are going to be bad. And I was asking what your thoughts were about why people don't seem to be grabbing the jobs up just yet. I mean, I think that unless I'm not right about that, I think many of the government programs have come to an end, and people still don't seem to be snapping up these open positions.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. But first of all, why weren't they working in the first place? I mean, would you work if somebody paid you not to work?
Nope. Sure wouldn't.
Right. So yeah. So I mean, that's why I said that part of the issue with the price increases is going to get resolved because people eventually will have to go to work. The money or whatever savings they have will run out, and they will have to go back to work. So it's just a matter of time.
Sure. Yeah, it is. I think that it is just a matter of time. I thought that people were going to go back to work a lot sooner. Like, I thought when the program ended, like the very next jobs report, or the report after that maybe, was going to be better. But one of the things that you did point out in your video is that many people are getting sick. I mean, I myself just got over COVID. I was out for 10 days. So, that was 10 days that my job didn't have me at work for sure. And I just was not there. And would you say that transportation also has an impact on supply?
Well, of course. But also, let's not forget that there is a certain group of population that during the COVID, they started businesses too. So this percentage is not going to be going back to the workforce if they successfully develop something else, some other source of income.
That's very true. A lot of entrepreneurship has certainly come out of the pandemic, and I do think that there's some policy issues that have impacted the job market. I think that, the vaccine mandates, I think that the government overplayed its hand as far as expecting compliance from people with the vaccines. Like, I really think that the government thought that they were going to be able to force people to get the vaccines, and people were like, no, I'm going to quit.
Yeah, well, that's actually what happened to my mother. She called me the other day, and she said they're forcing me to get a vaccine, and she said, okay, I'm quitting.
Right, and I don't think that the government expected that. Like, I think that they thought that people would just comply.
And I'm sure a lot of did.
Yeah, I'm sure that people did too.
Yeah, there's a lot of hardcore people, and I'm not personally political myself, but, this is, my mother is, and she didn't want to get a vaccine, and she chose to not work. But she's in a position where she can afford that because her husband is bringing enough home that she can do that. But you're absolutely right that there is a certain group of population that will choose just to quit because of that.
Right. And I think, I don't think that is in my opinion, I think it's weird. I know we're kind of getting off topic a little bit, but I think it's weird that that the vaccine issue is viewed as a political issue. Well, I don't know. I think it's a health issue.
When I was little, I got vaccinated, okay? Like, I never thought about it twice. And now with this COVID, this is the first time that I heard this argument about getting vaccinated or not. I never thought about it. And you're right. I'm not really sure why it is a political thing. And I do see that the people that don't want to get vaccinated, they're on the conservative side, and people that don't have a problem getting vaccinated are on the left. And I just find it kind of silly for this to be political versus health.
But I also think it's like nobody's business. I'm curious as to why people have an opinion on it. I'm like, why do you care? I don't understand. Like, that's nobody else is anybody else's business about any other vaccines. Like, we have flu vaccines and shingles vaccines. We have all these other voluntary vaccines that are very similar to the COVID vaccine. Nobody ever asks you about whether or not you got that vaccine. Nobody insists that you get that vaccine or you lose your job, except for this one.
Yeah, but for some things you have to get vaccinated, right? Like, if you want to send your kids to schools, there's certain vaccines that you have to take. Am I correct?
Yes, children.
Yeah.
Yes, children, before they've developed any kind of health history or anything like that. Yes, children. But not adults. After you've developed a health history, after you've developed certain conditions or not, after you've developed thoughts on things or not, and quite frankly don't have a choice or ability to make those decisions. But when you're an adult, you do.
Yeah.
So before the government to act to literally impose a health decision on grown adults is crazy to me. But it's insanity. But it's off topic. But I think. Not really off topic, because I think it contributed to the inflation, in the sense that I think the government made these rules thinking that people would just comply, and I think they overplayed their hand, thinking that way more people would just go ahead and get the shot than did. And I don't think it was a political decision. I think that some people were legitimately like, I'm not sure that that's going to be super healthy for me. and I don't want to do it. Me personally, I've never gotten a flu shot. I didn't think it was necessary. I work in a school. It's offered free every year, and I've always been like, no thanks. I feel the same way about the COVID vaccine. So, and to me, I put them in the same category. And I feel like if I can make that decision about the flu shot, why can't I make that decision about the COVID shot? What is the difference? That does
I hear you.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. And then when you add in how the science isn't really the science and the government is making you do it, like, wait, what? And you can't tell me it's like much more infectious than the flu. The flu is like super contagious. I don't know. It's crazy. But I think all of it is absolutely crazy. But the other thing about inflation, getting back directly to inflation, is, do you think that with inflation being what it is, that should encourage people to invest at this time? Do you think that maybe it's a good time to invest?
Well, one thing is for sure. If you go back 10 to 20 years, your $100 bought you more back then than it buys you now.
Correct, for sure.
And if we go 20 years into the future, it's going to be the same. The purchasing power of our money will lose value because we have a reckless and irresponsible government on the fiscal side.
Correct.
In other words, if you continually spend more money than you bring in, and I don't care what your excuse is, whether it's social programs, Social Security, whatever, if you spend more than you bring in, you create inflation because the shortfall has to be covered by something, and that's eventually going to be money printing. So if that's a 100% certainty, then you need to take your money and put it into things that either maintain value or increase in value over time. And you can put it in real estate. You're going to be okay. You can put it into productive assets like businesses or stocks, because stocks are businesses. And if those businesses continue to provide value to society, then you're going to do okay. But don't just buy any business, any stock, just because you think your money's going to lose value, because if you buy a bad business, bad stock, that stock is going to decline much faster than the purchasing power of your money. But I wouldn't hold cash for a long period of time. I hold enough cash just to pay bills and have some liquidity, but then everything else is put into productive things or things that will maintain purchasing power, because there's nothing I can do about our government being reckless.
And you're absolutely right, and that's something that you emphasized in that video about inflation, that both sides of the aisle absolutely do it, and it's really maddening that they do it. Like, they literally, that's how they do their budgeting, with a deficit. Like, who spends that? And the way you broke it down in the video, like, you guys have to check out his YouTube channel, because the way you broke it down in the video, I was like, he's absolutely right. He's totally right about that. How they do it, and it is ridiculous. Like, if they budget for it, I think you said something like, if they budget for $1, they spend $1.50. Like, what? And they do.
Yeah, if they collect $1, they spend $2. If they collect 100, they spend 140. If they collect 10 trillion, they will figure out how to spend 14. I mean, it's a certainty. They will always do it. So it's like asking your irresponsible uncle to start acting responsible. It's never going to happen. So what am I going to do with this? I'm not going to get angry, upset about it. I know my uncle is irresponsible. That's a given. And so what am I going to do about it? I'm going to invest my money in productive things so that the value of the things that I invest in grows faster than the purchasing power that they destroy.
That's exactly right. So how can they, if somebody wanted to subscribe to your YouTube channel, how can they get there?
Just go to YouTube and type in my name. That's impossible to spell.
I'm going to, but if they go to my social media, they will be able to find you because I have you posted on my page, on my Twitter page, on @MoneyTalkMel and @MoneyTalkWithMelanie on Facebook and on my Twitter and on my Instagram. They will be able to, and on my LinkedIn. They can find you in all of those places.
That's right.
Very good.
Follow Melanie.
And they'll be able to find you there. Thank you so much for coming on the show and breaking that down for us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You're listening to Money Talk with Melanie. We'll be right back.
Money Talk with Melanie.
Money Talk with Melanie.
Thursdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time on 98.7 The Coast.
Welcome back to Money Talk with Melanie. I just wanted to thank everyone. I wanted to give a few shout outs before we go to the Jefferson family. If you are listening this evening, thank you so much for listening. To Ms. Eileen, if you were listening, thank you so much. You're the best. Ms. Rachel Diaz for listening. Thank you. This is just all my peeps that I knew for a fact were listening. Oh, wait a minute. Eric in D.C., I knew he was listening too. Thank you so much. This is just my personal friends that I knew for a fact were listening because they were texting me. So I just wanted to give them a shout out. Thank you. And all of you who are listening, if you're listening by podcast, thank you so very much. And thank you. Remember, this is all very important because it is your money. Have a great night.